7. The Sorting Hat. Door swung open at once. A tall black hair witch in emerald green robe stood where she had a very slim face, and Harry's first thought was that he was not someone to cross. First year, Professor McGonagall, said Hagrid. Thank you, Hagrid. I will take them from here. She pulled the door wide. The entrance hall was so big you could have fit the whole of Dursley's house in it. The stone walls were lit with flaming torch like the one at Gringotts. The ceiling was too high to make out, and magnificent marble staircase facing them led to the upper floor. They followed Professor McGonagall across the flat stone floor. Harry could hear the drone of hundreds of voices from the doorway to right. The rest of the school must already be here. But Professor McGonagall showed the first year into a small empty chamber of the hall, crowded in, standing rather closer together than they would usually have done, peering about nervously. Welcome to Hogwarts, said Professor McGonagall. The sort of town banquet will begin shortly. But before you take your seats in Great Hall, you will be sorted into your houses. The sorting is very important ceremony because while you are here, your house will be something like your family within Hogwarts. You will have classes with the rest of your house, sleep in your house dormitory, and spend free time in your house common room. Four houses are called Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. House has its own noble history, and it has produced outstanding witches and wizards. While you are Hogwarts, your triumph will earn your house points, while any rule breaking will lose house points. At the end of year, the most points is awarded with the house cup, a great honor. I hope each of you will be credited to whichever house become yours. The sorting ceremony will take place in few minutes in front of rest of the school. I suggest you all smarten yourself up as much as you can while you are waiting. Her eyes lingered for a moment on Neville's clock, which was fastened under his left ear, and on Ron's smug nose. Harry nervously tried to flatter his hair. I shall return when we are ready for you, said Professor McGonagall. Please wait quietly. She left the chamber. Harry swallowed. How exactly do they sort us into houses? He asked Ron. Some sort of test. I think Fred said it's hurt a lot. But I think he was joking. Harry's heart gave a horrible jolt. A test in front of the whole school. He didn't know any magic yet. What on earth would he have do? He hadn't expected something like this the moment they arrived. He looked around anxiously and saw that everyone else looked terrified too. No one was talking much except Hermione Granger, who was whispering very fast about all the spells she had learned and wondering which one she'd need. Harry tried her hard not to listen to her. He had never been more nervous, never not even when he had to take a school report home to Dursley saying that he had somehow turned his teacher's wig blue. He kept his eyes fixed on the door. Any second now Professor McGonagall would come back and lead him to his dorm. Then something happened that made him jump about a foot in the air. Several people behind him screamed. What the? He gasped. So did the people around him. About 20 ghosts had just streamed through the back wall, purely white and slightly transparent. They glided across the room, talking to one another and hardly glancing at the first year. They seemed to be arguing. What looked like a fat little monk was saying, "Forgive and forget. I say, we ought to give him a second chance. My dear friar, haven't we give Pius all the chances he deserves? He gave us all bad names and you know he's not really even a ghost. I say, what are you all doing here?" A ghost wearing a rough and tight hat suddenly noticed the first years. Nobody answered. New students, said the fat friar, smiling around at them. About to be sorted, I suppose. A few people nodded mutteredly. Hope to see you in Hufflepuff, said a friar. My old house, you know. Go along now, said a sharp voice. The sorting ceremony is about to start. Sir McGonagall had written, One by one, the ghosts trotted away to the opposite wall. Now from a line, Professor McGonagall told the first years and follow me. Feeling naughty and though his legs had turned on lead, Harry got into a line behind a boy with sandy hair with Ron behind him, and they walked out of the chamber back across the hall and through a pair of double doors into the great hall. Harry had never ever imagined such a strange and splendid place. It was lit by those stands and thousands of candles that were floating in mid-air over four long tables where the rest of the students were sitting. These tables were laid with glittering golden plates and globes. At the top of the hall was another long table where the teachers were sitting. Professor McGonagall led the first years up here, so that they came to the hall in a line facing the other students, with the teachers behind them. A hundred of faces staring at them, looking like a pale lantern in the flickering candlelight. Dotted here and there among the students, the ghost shone misty silver, mainly to avoid all the staring eyes. Harry looked upward and saw a velvet black ceiling dotted with stars. He heard Hermione whisper, "Bewitched to look like a sky outside. I read about it in Hogwarts history." It was hard to believe there was a ceiling there at all, and that a great hall didn't simply open on the heaven. Harry quickly looked down as again Professor McGonagall silently placed a four-legged stool in front of the first years. On the top of the stool she put a pointed wizard's hat. That hat was patched and frayed and extremely dirty. Aunt Putania wouldn't have let it in the house. Maybe they had to try and get a rabbit out of it. Harry thought wildly. That seemed the sort of things. Noticing that everyone in the hall was now staring at the hat, he started at it. For a second, there was a complete silence. Then the hat twitched or tripped near the brim, opened wide like a mouth, and the hat began to sing. "Oh, you may not think I am pretty, but don't judge on what you see. I'll eat myself if you can find a smarter hat than me. You can keep your bowler's back, your top hat slick and tall, for I am the Hogwarts sorting hat, and I can cap them all. There is nothing hidden in your head. The sorting hat can't see. So try me on, and I will tell you where you ought to be. You might belong to Gryffindor, where dwell the brave at heart. Their daring nerve and chivalry set Gryffindor apart. You might belong to Hufflepuff, where they were just and loyal. Those patient Hufflepuffs were true and unfair to of all, or yet in wise old Ravenclaw. If you have read mind, where those of which and Leyland will always find their kind. Perhaps in Slytherin, you'll make your real friends. Those cunning folk use any mean to achieve there yet. So put me on. Don't be afraid, and don't get enough laugh. You are in a safe hand, though I have none, for I am a thinking cap. The whole hall burst into applause as the hat finished its song. It bowed to each of the four tables and then became quite still again. "So, we have just got to try on the hat," Ron whispered to Harry. "I'll kill Fred." He was going about whistling a troll. Harry smiled weakly. Yes, trying on that hat was a lot better than having to do spell, but he didn't wish they could have tried it on without everyone watching. The hat seemed to be asking rather a lot. Harry didn't feel brave or quick-witted or any of it at the moment. Only the hat had mentioned a house for people who felt a bit queasy. That would have been the one for him. Professor McGonagall now stepped forward, holding a long roll of parchment. "When I call your name, you will put on the hat and sit on the stool to be sorted," she said. "What hand?" A pink-faced girl with a blonde pigtail stumped out of the line, put on the hat, which fell right down over her eyes, and sat down. A moment pause. Hufflepuff, shouted the hat. The table on the right cheered and clapped as Han went to sit down at Hufflepuff's table. Harry saw the ghost of the fat Rare waving nearly at her. "Oh, Susan!" Hufflepuff shouted the hat again, and Susan stood up to sit next to her good lady. The table spun out from the left gap, spread several feet across the floor, shake hands with Harry as he joined them. Never has Harry could see Ron's twin brothers, Cat Cowell was Strode Millicent, then become a Slytherin. Perhaps it was Harry's imagination after all he had heard about Slytherin, but he thought it looked like an unpleasant lot. He was starting to feel definitely now. He remembered being picked for team during gym at his old school. He had always been last to be chosen, not because he was no good, but because no one wanted Dudley to think they like him. Finch, literally Justin, Hufflepuff. Sometime Harry noticed the hat shouted out the house at once, but it others it took a little while to decide. Ping Simon, the sandy-haired boy next to Harry in the line, sat on the school stool for almost a while a minute before he had declared him Gryffindor. Granger Harmony almost ran to the stool and jammed the hat eagerly on her head. Gryffindor, shouted the hat. Ron groaned. A horrible thought struck Harry. A horrible thought always do when you are very nervous. When if he wasn't chosen at all? What if he just sat there with the hat over his eye for ages until Professor McGonagall jerked it off his head and said there had obviously been mistake and he had better get off back on the train. When Neville Longbottom, the boy who kept losing his sword, was called, he fell over on his way to the stool. The hat took a long time to decide with Neville when it finally shouted Gryffindor. Neville ran off, still wearing it, and had a jog back amid gale of laughter to give it to McGonagall more. Malfoy swaggered forward when his name was called and got his wish at once. The hat had barely touched his head when it screamed Slytherin. Malfoy went to join his friends Crabbe and Goyle, looking pleased with himself. There weren't many people left now, Moon, Nod, Ferguson, and then a pair of twin girls, Patil and Patil. Then Bugs, Sally, Annie, and then the last Harry Potter. As Harry stepped forward, whispers suddenly broke out, little hissing fire all over the hall. Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter? The last thing Harry saw before the hat dropped over his eyes was the hall full of people craning to get a good look at him. Next second, he was looking at the black inside the hat. He waited. Said a small voice in his ear. Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see, not a bad mind either. There are talent, oh my goodness, yes, and a nice thirst to prove yourself. Now that's interesting, so where shall I put you? Harry gripped the edge of the stool and thought, not Slytherin, not Slytherin, not Slytherin. Yeah, said the small voice. Are you sure? You could be great, you know. It's all here in your head, and Slytherin will help you on the way you to greatness. No doubt about that. No. Well, if you are sure, better be Gryffindor. Harry heard the hat shouted the last word to the hall. He took off the hat and walked shakily towards Gryffindor's table. He was so relieved to have been chosen and not put in Slytherin. He hardly noticed that he was getting the loudest cheer yet. Percy the Perfect got up and shook his hand vigorously while the Weasley twin yelled, "We got Potter! We got Potter!" Harry sat down opposite the ghost in the ruffle he had seen earlier. The ghost patted his arm, giving Harry a sudden horrible feeling he had just plunged it into a bucket of ice cold water. He could see the high table properly now. At the end nearly him sat Hagrid, who caught his eyes and gave him thumbs up. Harry grinned back, and there in the center of the high table, in a large gold hair, sat Albus Dumbledore. Harry recognized him at once from the card he had gotten out of the chocolate frog on the train. Dumbledore's silver hair was the only thing in the whole hall that shone as bright as the ghost. Harry spotted Professor Quirrell too, the nervous young man from the leaky cauldron. He was looking very peculiar in the large purple turban. Now, there were only three people left to be sorted. Thomas Dane and a black boy even taller than Ron joined Harry at the Gryffindor table. Turpin Lisa became Ravenclaws, and then it was Ron's turn. He was pale green by now. Harry crossed his finger under the table and second later had shouted Gryffindor. Harry clapped loudly with the rest of as Ron collapsed into the chair next to him. Well done, Ron, excellent, said Percy Weasley pompously across Harry as Zabini Blessy was made a Slytherin professor. McGonagall rolled up her scroll and the sorting hat away. He looked down at his empty golden plate. He had only just realized how hungry he was. The pumpkin pasty seemed ages ago. Albus Dumbledore had gotten to his feet. He was beaming at the student, his arm open wide, as if nothing could have pleased him more than to see them all there. Welcome, he said. Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before he began our banquet, I would like to say a few words, and here they are. Nitwit, blubber, ornament, quick. Thank you. He sat down. Everybody clapped and cheered. Harry didn't know whether to laugh or not. Is he mad? He asked Percy uncertainly. Mad. Percy Yearly. He's a genius, best wizard in the world. But he is a mad. Yes, potatoes, Harry. Harry's mouth fell open. The dish in front of him were not piled with food. He had never seen so many things he liked to eat on the table: roast beef, roast chicken, pork chop, and lamb chop, sausages, bacon, and sig, boiled potatoes, fries, Yorkshire pudding, peas, carrots, gravy, ketchup, and for some strange person reason, peppermint humber. Dursley had never exactly starved Harry, but he had never been allowed to eat as much as he liked. Dudley had always taken anything that Harry really wanted, even if it made him sick. Harry filled his plate with a bit of everything except the peppermint and began to eat. It was all delicious. That does look like, said the ghost in the rough, sadly watching Harry cut up his stick. Aren't you? I haven't eaten for nearly 400 years, said the ghost. I don't need to, of course, but one does miss it. I don't think I have introduced myself. Sir Nicholas the Memsi, Worpington, at your service, resident ghost of Gryffindor Tower. I know who you are, said Ron suddenly. My brother told me about you. You are nearly headless, Nick. I would prefer you to call me Sir Nicholas de Mimsy. The ghost begins stiffly. But Sandy here, Simmons, friggin' interrupt. Nearly headless? How can you be nearly headless? Sir Nicholas looked extremely miffed, as if their little chat wasn't going at all the way he wanted. Like this, he said irritably. He seized his left ear and pulled. His whole head sunk off his neck and fell into his shoulder as it was on a hinge. Someone had obviously tried to behead him but not done properly. Looking pleased at the stunned look on their face, nearly headless Nick flipped his head back into his neck, puffed, and said, So, new Gryffindors, I hope you are going to help us win the championship this year. Gryffindors have never gone so long without winning. Slytherin have got the cup 6 years in a row. The bloody Baron almost unbearable is the Slytherin's ghost. Harry looked over the Slytherin table and saw horrible ghosts sitting there. Black starry eyes, giant face, and robe stained with silver blood. He was right next to Malfoy, who Harry was pleased to see. He didn't look too pleased with a seating arrangement. How did he get covered in blood? Asked Seamus with great interest. I have never asked, said nearly headless Nick delightedly. When everyone had eaten as much as they could, the remnant of the food faded from the plates, leaving them sparklingly clean as before. A moment later, the dessert appeared. Blocks of ice cream in every flavor you could think of: apple pie, treacle tart, chocolate, eclairs and jam, donuts, trifle, strawberries, jello, rice pudding. As Harry helped himself to trickle tart, the talk turned to their families. I'm half and half, said Seamus. My dad, a muggle. Mom didn't tell him she was a witch till after they were married. Bit of a nasty shock for him. The other laughed. What about you, Neville, said Ron. Well, my gran brought me up and she was a witch, said Neville. But family thought I was all muggle for ages. My great uncle Algie kept trying to catch me off my guard and force some magic out of me. He pushed me off the end of Blackpool Pier. I nearly drowned, but nothing happened until I was 8. Great Uncle Algie came round for dinner and he was hanging me out of an upstairs window by ankle when my great auntie had offered him milk and he accidentally let go. But I bounced all the way down the garden and into the road. They were all really pleased. Gran was crying, she was so happy, and you should have seen their face when I got in there. They thought I might not be magic enough to come. You see, great Uncle Algie was so pleased he brought my toad. On Harry's other side, Percy Weasley and Hermione were talking about lesson. I do hope they start right away. There's so much to learn. I am particularly interested in transfiguration, turning something into something else. Of course, it's supposed to be very difficult. You'll be starting small, just to match into needle and that sort of thing. Harry, who was staring to feel warm and sleepy, stopped at high table again. Hagrid was drinking deeply from his global. Professor McGonagall was talking to Professor Dumbledore. Professor Quirrell, in his absurd turban, was talking to teachers with greasy black hair, a hooked nose, and sallow skin. It happened when suddenly a hook-nosed teacher looked past Quirrell's turban, staring into Harry's eyes, and a sharp, hot pain shot across the scar on Harry's forehead. Ouch! Harry clapped a hand on his head. What is it? Asked Harry. Nothing. The pain had gone as quick as it had come. Harder to shake off was the feeling Harry had gotten from the teacher's look, a feeling that didn't like Harry at all. Who's that teacher talking to Professor Quirrell? He asked Percy. Oh, you know Quirrell already, do you? Wonder he's looking so nervous. That's Professor Snape. He teaches potion, but he doesn't want everyone know he's after Quirrell's job. Knows an awful lot about the dark arts. Snap. Harry watched Snape for a while, but Snape didn't look at him again. As the daisies too disappeared and Professor Dumbledore got to his feet again, the fall fell silent. Just a few more words now that can all fade and watch turn. I have a few sort of terms notice to give you. First year should note that the forest on the ground is forbidden to all pupils, and a few of our older students who do well to remember that as well. Dumbledore's twinkling eyes flashed in the direction of Weasley twins. I have also been asked by Mr. Fleece, the caretaker, to remind you all that no magic should be used between classes in the corridors, which trials will be held in the second week of the term. Anyone interested in playing for their house teams should contact Madam Hooch. And finally, I must tell you that this year the third floor corridor on the right hand side it's out of bound to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. Harry laughed, but he was one of the few who did. He's not serious, he muttered to Percy. Must be, said Percy, frowning at Dumbledore. It's odd because he usually gives us a reason why we are not allowed to go somewhere. The forest full of dragons, beasts, everyone knows that. I do think he might have told us perfect at least. And now, before we go to bed, let us sing a school song, cried Dumbledore. Harry noticed that the other teacher's smile had become rather fixed. Dumbledore gave his wand a little flick, and if he was trying to get a fly off the end, and a long golden ribbon flew out of it, which rose high about above the tables and which itself snackled into words. Everyone picked their favorite tune, said Dumbledore, and off we go. And the school bellowed, Hogwarts, Hogwarts, Hoggy Hogwarts. Teach us something, please, whether we be bold and bald or young with scabby knees. Our hair could be with filling, with someone interesting stuff. For now, they are bare and full of fear. Dead flies and bit of fluff, so teach us things worth knowing. Bring back what we have forgotten, just do your best, we'll do the rest. And learn until our brains all rot. Everybody finished the song at different times. At last, only the Weasley twins were left singing alone to a very slow funeral match. Dumbledore conducted their last few lines with his wand, and then they had finished. He was one of those who clapped loudest. Oh, music, he said, whipping his eyes. A magic behind all we do here. And now, bedtime. Off you trot. The Gryffindor's first year followed Percy through the chattering crowd, out of the great hall and up the marble stairs. Harry's legs were like lead again. But only because he was so tired and full of food, he was so sleepy even to be surprised that the people in the portrait along corridor whispered and pointed at they passed, or that twice Percy led them through doorways hidden behind sliding panel and hanging tapestries. They climbed more staircase, yawing and dragging their feet, and Harry was just wondering how much further they had to go when they came to sudden halt. A bundle of walking stick was floating in mid-air ahead of them, and Percy looked a step towards them. They started throwing themselves at him. Pews, Percy whispered to the first year. A poor trick. He raised his voice. You show yourself. A loud, rude sound like the air being let out of a balloon answered. Do you want me to go to the Bloody Baron? There was a pop, and a little man with dark eyes had a wide mouth appeared, floating across lagged in air, clutching the walking sticks. Oh, he said, with an evil crackle, eagle frosties. What fun! He swooped suddenly at them. They all ducked. Go away, Peeves of the ball, too. Hear about this, I mean it, barked Percy. Pew stuck out of his tongue and vanished. Dropping the walking stick on Neville's head, they heard him zooming away. Rattling paths of armor he passed. You want to watch out of Pew, said Percy as they set off again. The bloody baron, that the only one who can control him. He won't even listen to us. Perfect. Here we are at the very end of the corridor, hung a portrait of a very fat woman in pink silk dress. Password, she said. Jack Draculas, said Percy, and the portrait swung forward to dribble around Volgina. The walls babbled through. Neville needed a leg up, and Harry Their trunks had been already brought up, too tired to walk much. They pulled on their pajamas and fell into bed. Great food, isn't it? Ron muttered to Harry through the hangings. Get off, Scabber, he is chewing my sheet. Harry was going to ask Ron if he had any of the trickle start, but he fell asleep almost at once. Perhaps Harry had eaten a bit too much because he had a very strange dream. He was wearing Professor Quiller's turban, which kept talking to him, telling him he must clarify to Slytherin at once because it was his destiny. He told the turban he didn't want to be in Slytherin. It got heavier and heavier. He tried to pull it off, but it tightened painfully, and there was Malfoy laughing at him as he struggled with it. Then Malfoy turned into the hook-nosed teacher, Snap, who laughed became high and cold. There was a burst of green light, and Harry woke, sweating and shaking. He rolled over and fell asleep again. When he woke next day, he didn't remember the dream at all. That's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next chapter. Bye bye. See ya.